Welcome to Wooshkindein, the Alaska State Museum. My name is Addison Field. I'm the Chief Curator of the Alaska State Museums. It's my pleasure to get things started here tonight. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who will be sharing their knowledge and stories here this evening. That knowledge and those stories come from places all over this area that we call Alaska. We'll be sharing that knowledge in Tlingit Ani, in the village of the Occoquan, and I hope that I can honor and respect that knowledge in those places and be a thoughtful steward of this great place for future generations. We're fortunate to have, 6 artists here tonight to speak about their work. And it's my pleasure to give the first introduction, and then I'm going to let the first speaker here give the rest. Born in Mexico, Asia Freeman was raised primarily in Alaska, wildcrafting, fishing, and making art. After graduation from Homer High, she received a Bachelor of Art at Yale University. She co-founded the nonprofit multidisciplinary art space Bunnell Street Art Center, located in Homer. After earning an MFA in art at Vermont School of Fine Arts, Asia became artistic director at Bunnell. Presently, she serves on the board of Alaska Arts and Culture Foundation and National Performance Network, as well as the steering committee for Homer's Resilience Coalition. Protection, Adaptation, and Resistance is Bunnell Street Art Center's second national touring exhibition. Woo. Thank you, Larry. Yeah. It follows Decolonizing Alaska, which toured to the Alaska State Museum in 2017, and to our nation's first museum, the Corcoran Gallery at the George Washington University, located across from the White House. Protection, Adaptation, and Resistance started in Alaska and will fittingly conclude its tour in Alaska here at the Alaska State Museum. Please join me in welcoming Asia Freeman.
Thank you, Addison. Thank you, Jackie Manning, and thank you to all the staff at the State Museum who once again have made me and all of the artists here feel so welcome. So as Addison mentioned, I'm from Homer, and I came to this work as a child growing up in a house where I was made to stand by while my mother, a radio producer, edited interviews that she had conducted across Alaska of Indigenous Alaskans speaking to the impacts of colonization, those who are still living in urban and rural places across Alaska in the 80s. So she traveled to Point Hope, she traveled to Hooper Bay, she traveled to maximum security prisons, she traveled to church communities, and the whole process of editing was happening in a small room in our cabin. And so, I was transfixed. And I truly have been ever since, although I think it wasn't until many years later when Bunnell Street Art Center was established. And let me pause here for a moment and give my deepest gratitude to our president, Mary Schweenart. Please stand up, Mary. And her husband, Tom, for joining us here. Mary's made it to 3 of these exhibitions, and some of these artists have too, and it's really phenomenal because we're all celebrating protection, adaptation, and resistance together. It's ongoing work. And for Bunnell Street Art Center, a nonprofit located at Tuget in Homer, the process of learning from Indigenous artists is really the impetus behind the exhibition. What happened was, as COVID began, rising across our country, and we had access to some CARES funds, I started connecting with and noticing how many artists were really interested and already, in fact, doing some amazing mentorship and learning cohorts, which were surfacing forms of Indigenous resistance that have been the reason for survivance for thousands of years. So, for example, Lily Hope teaching Chill Cap protector mask as a mask that could go over an N95 mask was surfacing something that had been made a long, long time ago, but giving it new relevance and new life. And that is, that's Indigenous survivance. It's not the images that we think of in historically white institutions that place these romantic and flattened historic images of Indigenous culture, but the ways in which it's living, adapting today, and the source of strength and the source of energy during the impacts of COVID, which just surfaced, decades-old trauma from the Spanish influenza when so many first language speakers died, and subsequent cultural genocides with language loss and boarding schools and dislocation of families, and these myriad forms of trauma that just keep, moving out from the past and into the present, but also are resurfaced with the ongoing work of cultural survivance, especially what came up, after George Floyd's murder, because then it was like Black lives and brown lives standing together, or with climate justice, right? It's the ongoing relevance of the fact that only Indigenous lifeways are the truly right and sustainable lifeways. This is the bottom line. This is the message. And all of these artists have a way of showing that. So I'm going to show you a very short, a 6-minute movie that speaks to many of the workshops, not all of them, because there's actually 15 learning cohorts celebrated in this exhibition, and 6 were in the CARES-funded mentorships and learning cohorts that we were able to support during COVID, but some just before and some continuing after is what fed into the development of this show.
So Vanilla Street's Art Center, it's the Art Center in Homer, Alaska, that is making this all happen. And the series is Protection, Adaptation, and Resistance.
This is something that's being revitalized right now.
So I just started sketching on the actual stone.
I kind of want to do like rounds right here.
People they don't know a lot of information about lamps. And so when we are open about the knowledge that we do have, when we're open about receiving knowledge, that's so important and awesome to witness.
We'll do the fur pom-poms, and we'll put them on the tassels here.
Too cool. I did this.
Good job. It's looking nice.
So right here, would I turn this border blue braid and then have it splice with this?
You can bring the vertical mask braid over and tuck them over around the back. You bring your other point over here, like the curve of your nose goes to 8 or 9 wide. I took out 17 warps in this, and look at how straight the edges are.
So we're starting off with when you're dancing and you're coming down like the
Is that second word kind of like souverain?
Yeah, that's what it's close to, yes. Whenever we use the word fla, that is an extension of truth, or you're saying that it is truthful.
I have noticed that some people go up, other people go down with their voices at a certain spot in a song.
So when our elders sing, there are certain females that I always heard and they always hit high.
Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, ooh, hey, yeah, hey, yeah.
Oh, okay. Start pitting it. Okay, I got it.
Should I throw it like right here?
Yeah. Tucking in the bias tape.
So it's looking like that.
Yes, like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think like feeling connected, even though we're really far apart, is like pretty special.
During the pandemic, in this isolation, like I just really appreciate and value so much being able to connect with other Indigenous folks and other Alaska Natives.
For me, to tend the flame was kind of a connection with my ancestors, to realize that this is something that they did hundreds or thousands of years ago.
No, I don't want to do that. Let's see, how do I get back? I might need Clint's help really quick.
Let me do this real quickly.
Okay, there we go. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So, Amber Webb, come on up. When just before the pandemic, we had a cuspbook show, and Amber unfurled this huge cuspbook. She got me pretty excited.
Yeah, so I had drove down to Homer right as that was happening, and I pulled it out of my car, and I think I had forgotten my frame, and then that was Asia said, well, that's okay, we'll just open it up and we'll all hold it together. And then that became the way that I normally share it now, is that something happened when we all held it together. Like, I'm asking you to hold some of that weight, and I'm going to talk to you while you hold it, and then you can hold the weight that Native women carry all the time, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. It's always kind of under the surface or around corners, and you it's just kind of a reality. So when I started this project, the reason that I started the project is a family friend went missing. Her name was Valerie Sifsoff. So this whole entire project came about as a way to honor her. And when I started working on the project, I was looking for statistics, and I was thinking I would represent the numbers as like feathers or birds or some kind of, I was trying to find a symbol to represent just the numbers in Alaska, and I really quickly realized there was no data. There was no data, and this was right before Anita Lou Casey came out with the first database, and then this was right around the same time that Charlene was, ACPIC was working on data for Indigenous justice, and it was really clear that nobody was really tracking this, but we feel it. We feel it in our families. We feel this loss so tremendously. So I decided that kind of the only thing I could think of was that if I could draw portraits, if I could draw faces of people, and if I could make it so big that it couldn't be ignored, then people would have to talk about it. Then people would have to acknowledge that these things were happening. And I think it's really easy in this work to forget that there's so many other people doing it too. And I think it's really, we build on the work of the generations that came before us. So Disa Jacobson was doing hunger strikes, in the 90s, and she was asking why aren't these deaths being investigated? And I remember reading her letters to the editor in the newspaper as a teenager, as like a young teenager. So I remember that it was on my mind, and it just never went away. And so I started the project, and it kind of became something a lot bigger than me or anyone, because really the way that I see it is that it's a collection of other people's stories. It's not mine. I feel like that is something that belongs to everyone. It belongs to all of us, all of our people. And I think that there are about, that's good. Yeah, I think that there are about 23 people on there from my region in Bristol Bay. So I come from Bristol Bay, and so halfway through this project, it took getting halfway through this project to realize that my grandpa's mom was missing for 30 years. It was so normalized for me that's the reality that I didn't even connect that there was a missing woman in my own family. That's how, because when I was a kid, we'd go to by the cemetery, and he would say, my mom's in there somewhere and I don't know where she is. And then I found out that when the runway was extended in Sitka, there was this bunker with all these remains from the tuberculosis hospital. It turns out that she hadn't just left him. She had ended up at the tuberculosis hospital, and she had died, and nobody knew where she was. So they sent her remains home, but nobody told him. So somebody called him up and said, your mom's remains are like at the loading dock. You need to come get her. And so that was like, for him in his 60s, was just a tremendous amount of pain, but also relief. And it's when I started talking to people, they really had to think about it. So there's a few things I'd like to highlight about the project. We work really hard as artists to make people feel things. Like the only way that we can change anything, the only way that you can change somebody else's perspective on something is if you can make them feel it. And my sister, so after I kind of started wrapping up this project, I quickly realized that I had to look at where violence against women meets up with substance use disorder, meets up with homelessness, meets up with boarding school trauma, and it's all connected, and it all comes from colonization. And so then I had to look at how I was going to be a part of changing things for my community. And when I gave the guest book to Asia for this show, to the Anchorage Museum, I think. But I was entrusting it to Asia for this show. I had to go to this meeting, and my sister was like, I wish we could bring the Gus book to this meeting. And she said, I understand in this moment that I have to be the Gus book. I have to give something of myself to make people feel what I'm talking about so that they will be willing to change this policy that could have an impact on people's access to treatment in our communities. And so I had a lot more sort of organized things to say, but I want to thank everyone who's in this show, and I just want to thank everyone who's continuing to be our hearts in the state, and remind people that we are still here and that we're all still taking care of each other. And that maybe I'll end with this. I have this friend named Josh Cocker who works with the Native Wellness Institute, and I was in a training with him one time, and he said, we might not all have had large stone monuments that Western people would recognize as like these monuments, these big like elaborate structures, though some of us did have those. But our relationships with each other, those were our monuments. Like, we are the monuments. Like, all of the things that really were, like, we were masters of relationships. And through all this time where our relationships have been attacked, we've continued to be connected to each other. And so as we're moving forward, I think the biggest protection we have is how we treat each other and how we uphold each other. And I think there's no room for like ego in that. And so I think that's why it's such a tremendous honor to be a part of this show and to just be able to stand with everybody doing really incredible work, preserving culture, and also like showing how we're still alive. We have living cultures and we have living languages, and that's really special. So, good.
In the same exhibit that Amber unfurled, that giant Gus book, Bobby Ita Brower made a Gus book for her sister Nancy, who she had never honored in this particular way. And I realized that this work of activism and social justice it was one really important current that we could highlight by leaning in together. And I wasn't sure how it would unfold, but that theme is one of the three major themes in the exhibit. And these are a couple images of Amber's work at the Museum of International Folk Art. I particularly love how here at the State Museum and on the back, and here and in Santa Fe, you can see that the piece is ongoing. The work is not finished. And this is just a really cool installation shot where you see at least 3 different bodies of work that relate to this theme of activists for justice and well-being. So Amber's piece, of course, and then the red circle called Healing Stitches, which was created by 6 Indigenous women who met over Zoom and learned how to sew Gus books, but particularly to sew these Gus books in honor of women and children who had disappeared from their own families. Another piece in the exhibit is these 3 panels created by Sarah Whalen-Lunn, who is an Inupiaq woman from Unalakleet, and she's also part of this thread of activism through tattoo. And she's one of the women who created many of the tattoo images that you see in a set of 9 selfies that Indigenous women provided of their own, of the tattoos they had received. And these are some images taken by Anchorage-based photographer Michael Conti, who created a film which was produced by Holly Nordlum and screened here called Tupuk Mi. And Holly, together with Sarah, is one of the leading artists in Alaska, who has studied Inuit tattoo and is really sparking a tremendous wave of knowledge, pride, and revival of tattoo. Most importantly, as she says, to wear her identity, to not pass as non-native, but to be really clear and proud of something which her ancestors were made to feel ashamed about. So those are some of the young women who have received tattoos recently and wear them proudly from all over Alaska. This was a much bigger project, but these are just 9 of the pieces which are included in this show. And I'd like to invite Kashitla, Louise Brady, to join me up here and speak to the work of the herring protectors. So I've got 3 images, and I'll just scroll them through as you're speaking.
Okay. Gracias. Ashish Tlayuchat do Asal Kiksadi Ayachat, Kahit Nachasati, Kagwantan, Dachan Ayachat. Kachat Jasha Nachatsati. My Tlingit name is Ashish Tla. I also carry the name of 2 of my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother. And I don't know, it's like 6 years ago. It was actually in 2016. A group of us worked together in Sitka around supporting Standing Rock. And that was a very challenging year, if you remember. And we organized a rally, and then we did a fundraiser. We raised $10,000. And it felt so good to do something positive, to do something good at a time that was really difficult. We decided that we wanted to continue to work together. And when the question was raised, what should we work on? I said herring. I wasn't sure what anybody's response would be. But they all said, yes, we agree. Our people here in Southeast have been, it's like, I don't know, if you ever can make it to Shitka, to Sitka during herring season, it is an incredible, I don't even know how to explain it. It's amazing because Sitka's on the outside of the island, Shitka, and we have so many herring that come to Sitka. And how many of you have had herring eggs? Yay! Okay, that's what it's all about, and about our relationship to the herring. And so one of the things in talking and listening to some of my friends who were gatherers, I asked a friend of mine, because nobody in my family was harvesting, if I could give him some gas money for some herring eggs. And he said, Louise, it's just really getting hard. It's really getting hard. We're having to go all over Sitka Sound. We're having to spend lots of money. We go and we try to, we find a place where they're spawning. And it's just really getting difficult. And so that was one of the reasons that we started this. And then they said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, let's have a ku'ik. And most of the people there didn't know what it was. And they asked me to explain it. And I said, you can't really explain it. We just have to do it. And so a group of pretty diverse people, we started getting together and making gifts. And I think the biggest, I hope you have heard the story of the herring lady, the Kachat Jasha. It's a very female-based story, and as we heard, we've been struggling as Indigenous women for many, many years, and also as Indigenous people. And so as we started, I worked with somebody the first year to create a herring robe, and Carol Huey, who was trained in design. And so we made the first herring robe in 2000, I think for 2018. And then I thought we needed a tana. Do you all know what a tana is? A copper shield. And because there was so much female energy in this movement in the herring, I asked Jennifer Younger to create a tana. And it was really, really beautiful. And these were all introduced as at'u. And then I asked, after I saw the tana, I thought it was so beautiful, I asked Jennifer if she would make a herring lady robe. And I told her that I would really like us to be able to dance the herring robes. And so she agreed to design them. And I hope you took a look at it, because it's really difficult to explain. You can't explain how important herring are to us. And if you look at the robes, and the herring are swimming along the bottom of the robes, they're in the shape of a DNA helix, which I think really describes what our relationship is. And I feel like, our people have been going to these Western organizations like the Board of Fish, wherever, and they don't understand why we want them to make sure that we have this wonderful relationship with herring and that the herring stay. And it's finding that spiritual connection. And it was amazing, because I have watched so many elders and culture bearers go before the Board of Fish and get their 3 minutes. But you know what? When we have ceremony, they get however much time they want, and they can say what they want. And we are currently interviewing elders. The youngest elder we're interviewing is 67. We just interviewed a 90-year-old about what is it that is so special about herring. And it's really interesting, because it comes back to colonization. And I think that it was amazing when I was speaking with one of the elders, and he started crying, and he started apologizing. He's like, I'm just so sad about what they're doing. He talked about, his fish camp, their fish camp being burned down. And he said they went right back and built it up again, and then they burned it down again. And he says, and I don't know why I get so emotional. I said, you know why? Because what they did, that was the beginning of them destroying us. That was like the beginning. We had a food economy, so they were starting to destroy our economy and everything that we held dear. And I feel like this is, the robes and all the artwork that is coming out. There's also a song. That I composed. And it's so funny, I've never considered myself an artist. But, and then, I don't even know what you call it, made up a dance, like choreographed, I guess is what you call it in Western. And it was pretty powerful. I didn't know if people would understand it, but they did. And it is such a powerful way to get across something I think that we have such difficulty saying. And I also am, I could have been one of those murdered and missing women. And so I make sure, if you go visit our website, that, it's an women, Indigenous-led group, and that we are always honoring women, and we are creating safe spaces. And we make sure that when we have our ceremonies, that they are safe for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're young, if you're an elder, if you're LGBTQ, if you're whatever. It's like everybody deserves a safe place. And the last robe we created was called the Mother Herring robe, because when herring are threatened, they ball up and protect each other. And so the last robe was, the Mother Herring robe. And it's up to us, basically, as communities, we have to quit leaving it to the legal system. We have to quit leaving it to the court system and all of these other people, and step up and assure that our communities are safe for everyone. And that we're understanding that, life isn't about going to work and getting a job. You're lucky if you like your work, that's fine. But what it's about is creating relationships, and whether it's with each other, whether it's, with our clan brothers and sisters, or our opposite clans, or our neighbors, or the herring or the salmon, it's up to us to find that relationship and identify that relationship that is strong. And it's so strong that it is a part of our DNA. So that's the hope, is that, we find those relationships within all of our, we find that sacredness. That's it. We go back to understanding that I'm sacred, that you're sacred, that herring are sacred. And how do we treat each other when we know that? Yeah.
Just wanted to acknowledge Kanagulinda Starbird, who led her family in the creation of these hats, which are displayed with the robes in the museum. And Marjorie Kunak Tabon, who led the Nanak stone lamp carving cohort. And something that was really interesting that might not have been evident when you were watching the video is that the participants in that workshop were from Southeast to Kodiak Island to the Arctic slope. They were from all over Alaska. So that form goes all the way back to the original people of everywhere, moving out into Alaska and taking the stone lamp with them. So it was really exciting how, as a teacher, she was, and a young teacher, she is perpetuating that knowledge. The youngest learner in the Nanak cohort at the time was 14 years old. That's Ellie Tansey right here. And Jackie Catalina Schaefer, who was in this cohort, was also made one of the Healing Stitches cuss that is displayed here, one of the red cuss books. Joel Isaac, would you speak to us?
Du Kili Tarashnash, Fodor Calendar Pennington Shachita Railatin, Chagel Nikt Vakaya Kailanda, Sharon Isaak-Łiq'a, David Isaak-Łiq'a, Hleka Yis Deniina Shiiji, Joel Isaak-Łiq'a Shiiji, Helen McLean, Shidochtel Diehen. Just want to acknowledge everyone in the space respectfully. My grandmother was Fedora Calendar Pennington. She originally was from Point Possession. The Dena'ina word for our place there is Chagel Nikt, which is the triangular point, kind of like a piece of fabric or hide that comes to a point. It's one of the spots where Captain Cook sent some men ashore to bury a jar of gold quarters and never actually came ashore himself. So it's just a little bit about where my family's from. My grandmother and her uncles and some of her immediate family who survived evacuated to Anchorage before Anchorage was the tent city, air quotes, name for it. So my family is Dena'ina, and Anchorage was my grandmother's second village after they had to evacuate when the epidemics were rolling through South Central. And my parents are Sharon and David Isaac. My Dena'ina name is Hleka Yis, and this is my teacher, Helen. She is an amazing person, and our a Dena'ina word for birch bark baskets, one of them is Aralchachi, which means the one that is folded. Thinking about the protections concept, it was during COVID, Asia and I had a conversation, and thinking about the work that Helen and I were able to do. I've been working with her for 15 years, and I get to hear about her experience doing basket camp with her cheetah, her grandmother. And I learned how to make baskets with her, which was a science fair project I had done in grade school, but never made one in grade school because I don't have access to it because it requires a forest. And I grew up in the woods, but not having the right trees around me and not the amount of forest that it actually takes to do basketry in a way that's protective of the forest itself, but also I didn't have access to that. So we had an opportunity, the Seward Highway Bypass Project in Russian River is going through, and they're punching through old growth Dena'ina forest, which is where my people do canoe bark from. And she and I would go out, I'd go out after work. I'd leave at like 4:30 from Kenai and drive to Cooper Landing, and we walked about a 4-mile stretch for the space of 2 weeks. Was this 2021? So she was 76, doing about a 2-mile walk next to the highway. I'd carry a ladder and a hunting backpack for the bark to go into. And that's what we did for 2 weeks in June before they clear cut the right of way. And it was a mad dash to try and gather as much as we could respectfully. And we had the opportunity to make 80 baskets that summer. I kind of damaged my hands. Don't recommend doing that fast. I was on extended medical leave from work, and I had to come back to work, and it was like, we need to finish this before I go back to working for my very full-time state job. And so that pressure, which is totally not an Indigenous way of basket camp, which is why you take breaks so you don't injure yourself. But that's part of we needed to get this done in this time period. And so that's a little bit about how this came to be. We were able to go out the next summer as well. And that summer, the basket that's in this exhibit is the largest birch bark basket that I'd ever made, that Helen and I had made together. And that was the first summer. And then the next summer, we were able to harvest bark for a canoe. And so it pulled a continuous piece of birch bark with no holes in it, the size of a sheet of plywood off of one tree. And that was after going 4.5 feet up, we made a potlatch basket, and then the 8 feet above that was a continuous sheet. So it's like magic, where the forest is there, and we talk about trees giving themselves to you. It is that piece. I've been looking for a birch bark canoe tree for 15 years. And we were exiting one day, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and that's in the zone that we can harvest. And so it's just those types of connections of being able to go to the land and be with the land is a very protective piece of the work. The other thing about birch bark, it's what we cradle our babies in. So it's what we would cook food in. There's teacups in the exhibit. Those are the ones that are folded and just pinned. And the orange part it's a similar medicine to what's in chaga. It has a lot of medicinal properties, and one of them actually can help with chemo cancer patients. And there's an elder who just passed away on Saturday who we brought the medicine from the trees that we harvested to him, and he was able to get up and walk the next day after having the tea. And so it's it's not a cure in that sense, but it helps flush the toxins that cancer puts into the body out. And then so it increases the quality of life, even though it's not reversing the actual cancer itself. So just thinking about that level of protection for something that's cancerous, that's destroying the body, our bark takes that away. This is a workshop that I was in Tulsa when the show was there, that I brought baskets down and showed the students there. The other thing that I just want to highlight, this is the way that I think about this is Helen's work. And the reason that she is able to do this is because her grandparents hid her when the boarding school agents came through to capture kids. So that level of generational protection is what this show, or this pieces, and what the connection for the show, for the work that Helen and I do, is part of that. And when we see our Indigenous practices, especially the ones that women caretake, that's embedded in it. And so I want to bring her voice into that space because she often does talk about it, but doesn't get to be seen in that way. And so I just appreciate and want to acknowledge the women who protect and have continued to protect, and the role of how Helen has helped train me and our relationship age-wise for master apprenticeship. That's part of what baskets embody. And it's been that way for thousands of years. There is a connection between men and women working on baskets. And there's the sustaining qualities that they do for medicine, for keeping us healthy, but also for protecting our homes. That's what our roofs are made out of. It's what we cradle our kids in. It's what we eat out of. It's what we drink out of. And you can replace anything with plastic with that if you keep the forest healthy. So there's also a connection to spruce trees and willows. So there's other medicinal plants that are brought into it. So I'm gonna pause there or stop there with that, but that's a little bit about highlighting the birch bark work.
Thank you.
This is one of my dear friends, Melissa Shaganoff's work. She and I were able to teach workshop at Tulsa. She did the one for being good neighbors, good relatives. And so I'm going to briefly speak for some of the piece that she has in the collection, or in the exhibit. Thinking about when we come onto other people's land. So today, Minglinke Ani, for me as a guest, part of that introduction that's in her work is the introduction of your ancestry. And by bringing your ancestry and acknowledging it to the people who you're with is respectful of that work. And then it also invites the reciprocal of whose ancestry are you engaging with. And so that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the conversation with her, and the idea of how to be a good guest in a way that brings together the conversation around how the US and parts of the world were settled through colonial mechanisms, but bringing people together in a way that is instructional and equips people who are visiting on our Indigenous lands throughout the state or throughout the country and the world. So it's a way that it also fosters those questions about where the connection to place, wherever that place is for the individual in the world, and being able to think about as you go into a space. This is an example in Tulsa, for different ways that people identify and connect with each other. And then also, this was a very powerful exercise in Oklahoma because the history of the relocation and the erasure of so many peoples that are in Oklahoma, but also the active dark history of how many people go missing in Oklahoma, while so much of the state is considered Indian territory as a federal definition term. So I think it's really provocative in that place. She also brought Indigenous food down. That's part of the being a good guest, to be able to share food with each other. That reciprocity piece, I think is one of the key pieces of it. And then I'm just gonna, the bottom one here, I can create a relative by, and I can protect the land by. Thinking about the relative, the relationship connection to land and to place, and that we're not living like on the land, we're living with the land as a place. And so thinking about that connection not in a hierarchical way. So I am similar to the land in, and there's the blanks that you can fill in and be able to do that. So those are some of the pieces that Melissa was working on. The other thing for her piece is it's on smoked moose hide. And so that's one of the skill sets and practices that she's working on. Melissa and I had an opportunity to do a Smithsonian Arctic Studies Center documenting project with Aatna and Da.áat Hope elders. And so just continuing that traditional connection to place and that work that involves community. Working on moose hides is a community activity. Otherwise, you damage your hands, as I have also done, and Melissa has also done as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of that thinking about those connections and what we learn by doing moose hides and projects of that scale really gives you that time to pause and think about the connection to a living being, its connection to place, and oneself's connection to that, and then this ancestral relationship to doing these skills. It's a ceremonial piece, and those types of things are very protective for our spirits, for us as people. And so those are just some of the conversations I just wanted to highlight from talking with Melissa about the work and being able to do some of the practices and doing this out of downtown urban Anchorage. So making it happen in the city, because the city might be where was planned, that's still Indigenous place. We didn't go away from living in Anchorage, and the connection to the Aatna Da.áat Hope people between Anchorage and just up the road where Melissa's family's from. So it's been an honor to be able to work with her on that and be able to do the workshops and travel with the exhibit with her. So, Janan, Melissa, and thanks for letting me talk about and highlight her work.
So clearly the exhibition aims to center Indigenous ways of knowing, but also a confluence of tactics and traditions that resurfaced during the pandemic. And so, literally, I think within just weeks apart, I was in touch with Lily about the Chilkat Protector Mask Project, which you'll see, but then Tommy Joseph texts some pictures of red cedar and yew wood masks that he's put out in the forest just to take pictures of these masks that feature, traditional symbols and animals, the role that these animal spirits have as protectors that guide you in your journey. And of course, he created these masks to fit over the N95 mask and to indigenize protection of the body and to make the importance of mask wearing Indigenous. And of course, Crystal will speak to that as well, but I just wanted to take this moment to lift up Tommy's amazing work and how it looked at the Museum of International Folk Art. It's so neat how in each of these different exhibits, artists come forward, they kind of step into the light in a different way. And so in the Museum of Conscience, where the Gallery of Conscience, where the Museum of International Folk Art chose to place this exhibition, Tommy's work was on the title wall. Lily, thank you.
Lily Hope is my English name. Wooshkindein Da.áat Hope, my Tlingit name is Wooshkindein Da.áat. I am Raven moiety of the Da.áat clan. And I was born in this protection. I was born in the call. The water never broke, and I was born in this little water sack. And I have been there my whole life, I guess. I have always felt that there's this little shield around me, which makes it very possible for me to take steps that are a little outside of the box. or a little less fearful than others who don't have that same kind of shield, maybe. I don't know. But one of these masks, it was blue once upon a time. I wove a mask in early 2020, very much like this one, and submitted it to the first American Art Magazine call for Indigenous-made masks in response to the pandemic, and was included in the series of masks. And then I had realized that I needed to adapt my teaching. I was teaching 10, 12 classes a year in person prior to the world shutdown. And I made some adaptations and started offering workshops online, which expanded to be able to teach Canadian artists and Oregonian artists and Coloradoan artists and New Mexicans and Arizonians, all the way to the East Coast in Maryland, without having to fly anywhere. And, you know, that was really beautiful. And the community that was built around that, and the feeling of being able to reach through the Zoom and embrace each other and protect each other through this community work, you know, weaving for identity, weaving for cultural assertion, weaving for we're still here, that narrative, right? But my Aunt Deanna said it best, and also you can follow her at Your Auntie D. She made these, you're welcome. At Your Auntie D.EE on Instagram. She said it best about my masks, or she put the thing together, and she said, you know, these are symbolic that we were here, we took care of each other, we survived, and we're still weaving. I submitted work in the same years to the Fiber Art Now, and the editor reached out to me and said, I have been the editor of this magazine for 37 years. You know, it might have been hand-woven. No, it was Fiber Art Now. And she said, I have been the editor of this magazine of Fiber Art Now for 37 years, and I have never seen Chilkat weaving come over my desk. Are there still people making this art? And since then, of course, I've had multiple pieces in that. But going back to this whole thing, it's wild to me that there are people in the lower 48 that don't know about Chilkat weaving. We all know what a Turkish textile looks like, a Moroccan textile, you know, a Navajo weaving. Who can look at one of these and say, I know that originates in the northwest coast of Alaska and Canada. That is contemporary Chilkat weaving. This is our resistance to being obliterated, to being wiped out. This is us saying we are still here. So we put this awesome photo together thanks to Sydney Akagi and all the people who wove masks and were volunteer models. Then the volume of regalia that is here, there are some Chilkat weavings, Ravenstail weavings, button robes. What do we have? There's an ermine tail robe there, like regalia that we have been making since the beginning of time. And then enmeshed in this contemporary assertion of protecting each other, wearing our masks to protect our most vulnerable. We've even got a baby in the picture. Yeah, that protection, our resistance to being continuously moved from our lands and resisting that. Thank you.
A third theme, and truly, there isn't one. These aren't like three distinct themes, right? It's like a Venn diagram: activists for justice and well-being, resilient futures, and protectors of land and culture. It's just a way of surfacing the complexity and the multiplicity of layers that are engaged, that are invoked through these customary practices. Crystal.
Ka kia yu khat duasak, yech ay khat luka hadina khatsati, alna da kehidi yechet, shangukhidi yadi ay khat, gonana na khatsati. My English name is Crystal Rose Demientieff Worl. My Tlingit name is Ka kia. I am Raven from the Sockeye Salmon clan, and I am also Athabascan from my mother's side. And this is a really honorable show to be a part of, and my second time being in exhibition with Asia, being the first one was Decolonize. And I think all of my pieces that were in this show and the last show had everything to do with family. At the time I was studying with my mentor, Robert Davidson, in Vancouver. The COVID pandemic had gotten serious, and my family said it's time to come home. And so I came home and I moved in with my dad and my stepmom and my younger brother, and just completely isolated with them. And I had a lot of time on my hands and a lot of just materials that, you know, when you're an artist, you collect a lot of materials and you save a lot of things, and you're like, I need this, I need this. Well, I had a closet full of materials and a sewing machine and some needles and thread and some beads. And so I started thinking of, you know, we had to wear these really ugly N95 masks, and I was like, why can't they be cool? You know, like everything I wear should be cool looking. And so I decided to start making a mask out of anything and everything, material-wise. I made a mask out of skin sewing with seal fur. I made a mask out of tanned fish skin. I had also learned some of my fish skin tanning from Joel a while back. And I had beaded all the pieces, and, you know, they obviously weren't functional, but I started going out and posing in my masks and posting them on Instagram to see, you know, I was like seeing all these indigenous people put out all these different types of masks that they had beaded, they had woven, they had sewn. And so I wanted to contribute to the movement. At the time, people were looking for artwork related to COVID, and there was grants and opportunities for me to apply to. And I had all this time on my hand to start applying to grants and RFPs and calls for art. And one in particular was amplifier.org. They do a lot of poster work that's related to justice and activism and politics. And so I started making pieces to get on their website that they did a campaign for get vaccinated. And so I thought about, you know, what would Raven do in the modern day? And I was also seeing, you know, looking at how COVID had on a molecular scale, like what did it look like underneath the microscope? And so I thought about what would Raven look like and what would he do with this virus. And so I created this piece, Get Vaccinated, in addition to the whole collection of Stay Home and Protect Our People. At the same time, when COVID started happening, it impacted our family immensely. My auntie Gloria Demientieff was the first person to get COVID in Alaska, and she also had Alzheimer's at the time. So it was really challenging for our family to not be beside her and not be allowed to see her or be next to her, and her to have Alzheimer's and not know what was happening and not know why her family wasn't there or couldn't be. And so I wanted to make artwork that made me feel connected to her, but also made me feel like I wanted to ask my neighbor to respect me and my family and respect each other by wearing a mask. Yeah, and so I think it's natural for me to see something that's relevant to the time and like create something around it, to indigenize it, to reclaim it, and to feel a certain pride that I can contribute to awareness of what's happening in the world and how it's affecting our people. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Early on in the pandemic, this incredible stamp came out, and it was just one more provocation to acknowledge and uplift this amazing co-arising of resistance and the many forms it has taken in Alaska. Rico.
Lanaat Worl, Yesna Ayachat, Sukachari Hatsati, Yeshit Ayachat, Jiskat Dach Ayachat. I am Rico Lanaat Worl, and I am of the Raven moiety, and I'm from the Sukachari clan. I am from the Raven House, and from Chilkat Kwan. I am from my father's people, the Shungu KD. I am from 10,000 years of a people's relationship to this land. I'm from at least 4,000 years of a people's study in a specific design style. I'm from 525 years of colonization, and more importantly, from 525 years of survivance. And I am from the Tlingit people and the Athabascan people. I am from the dedication of the generations before me as they worked to pass the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and I am from a family of strong and loving people. I am from Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo with my cousins, and I'm from Star Trek and Star Wars with my homework. I'm from the 90s with my homies. I am from the rise of the age of the internet. I'm from University of Pennsylvania Department of Anthropology, class of 2008. I am from urban exploration. I am from downtown hometown. I'm from pigment and silver, and I am from digital vector points. And all these vector points have kind of like guided me along the path to where I am today, which a lot of my work comes to three kind of main points. One is intra-community strength, so like helping provide tools so that us within our communities can feel pride. It's just everyday simple little things like, you know, bringing a piece of mail to the mailbox. It's got form line on it, hell yeah. The second one is inter-community connection. So like, this is what we're doing right now is like, you know, we're not all the same people in here, but we're sharing knowledge with each other. And that's going to be vital for something that I'm going to come back to after. But the third goal is cultural diplomacy. So, you know, a lot of us artists and my sister and I have, you know, the opportunity to share these stories on platforms more than just here, but nationally. And Lily, the story of like, that's just crazy. Somebody, a textile magazine never even heard of chokat weaving, something that's like so epic. It's just such a miss. And so a lot of that, there's still so much cultural diplomacy to do. The stamp is, well, my second biggest run of prints was something like 700 prints, like in one edition. And that was an accident. The printing company, I don't know, they went from 70 to 700. They put an extra 0 in there. And like, that's a lot of prints that I have of that one. So come see me at Free Prints. But this was 18 million. There are 18 million little ravens flying around the country. Okay, they're not anymore because they're all sold out. You can try and I think you can try and donate to SHI and maybe they'll thank you with one that's on theirs. I hear they have a stash. Yeah, I think it could feel really simple, but like making these connections and building that empathy is something that's like that seems so simple. And I know everyone here is like, yeah. But like, it seems so simple, yet it's still being missed, you know? I think all the artists here are not only just artists, not, you know, all the artists in the show are not only artists, but they're also scholars. You know, they're creating all this educational material for everyone to like learn the depth of the things that they're experiencing, that their families experience, that those help us build these bridges. And but and as we get into a more and more global world, we have to be able to be receptive to these bridges, you know, not only here, but I don't think I could, you know, talk to the topic of adaptation, protection, resistance without also, you know, mentioning Gaza right now. I went to the assembly meeting on Monday where they were talking about the ceasefire, and I know I see a few people who are there as well. And I'm gonna say I'm embarrassed, like, because one of their reasons was like, oh, we're not experts. You don't need to be an expert to have empathy and know that peace is like something that you can ask for no matter what. Yeah, thank you.
I'd be good to end it there, but there's a couple more artists I want to acknowledge. Melissa Shaganoff's cousin, Demi Majeras, who was raised within Chicaloon Village, was raised with the creation stories that were taught to him by his grandmother, Catherine Wade. His mother, Patricia, established the first full language immersion school for children, Yana Da in Chicaloon. And Demi grew up illustrating these stories. And later, he connected with Casey Silver, who is interested in very similar things. And based out of Seattle, they created this incredible company, 80% Studios, and these most amazing illustrations that are cinematic and now available in a collection called Chicaloonies. And they have been all over the state of Alaska, including right here to this museum just a week ago, presenting workshops for kids that elevate the art of the graphic novel and utilizing that as a platform for traditional stories. And it seems like a perfect convergence conceptually. It was super exciting to print these really large on metal and eventually to give them back to Demi and Casey. And I just wanted to close by acknowledging Hannah Agasuk Shoal, who is a Sukpiaq artist from Kodiak, who composed the music that you heard when you entered the room. And it's a piece called I think she just calls it Song. And it's a song about the connections between Indigenous peoples everywhere, shared struggles, particularly, you know, around land and being safe in your culture and your community. And I think that it does speak exactly to the situation in Palestine and Gaza. I'd like to thank you all and thank all these artists. I'd like you to all stand up, including those who participated in the Chilkat Protector masks, who are makers of masks and didn't speak today. Will you stand up first, all of you who made Chilkat Protector masks? Thank you. So glad you came out tonight. And to all of the artists who are in the show, please stand up again. We want to thank you for coming out tonight. And to any of the Alaska State Museum staff who are here, thank you. Clint in the tech booth, Jackie, Addison, stand up. Come on, you guys. You're awesome. I love to work with you. So glad to come back again and to share this. And I really want to thank all these amazing funders, especially the Siri Foundation, who went out ahead of anyone by supporting Alaska artists to perpetuate traditional and customary practices in these workshops. And we captured them on Zoom, and then we just really got rolling. Thank you.